Hey, good Saturday afternoon. Give me 1 second before we start this live on Dorian. Gonna give you a 15, 20 minute kind of breakdown of the latest update at 5 p.m. I'm gonna open up this live on my phone and then prop it up so I can see if y'all have any comments. You can feel free to shoot them there, and I'll do my best to answer them. But it is good news, locally speaking, for Dorian, really the entire East Coast, I would say. The latest outlook does have some good news in terms of the track. It's continuing to shift really, really far eastward, and looks like that impact for the state of Florida, at least the threat of it, is decreasing as it continues to stay offshore, at least the National Hurricane Center track, and it is getting a little bit more consistent with our modeling. So I'm going to share some of that with you here. Let me share this on my page. And again, if you guys have any comments, feel free to shoot them in there. We'll do our best to answer those for you. We don't have an early show this evening for the 6:30 because of football. So if you wanted to tune in at the early show, just keep in mind we do not have one. But we do have our 11 o'clock show. That'll be after the Auburn versus Oregon game. So here's a look at Dorian. I shared those on the pages. Again, I'm watching on the comments here so I can see if you guys do have any questions there. Dorian's latest look on satellite imagery. This is the visible imagery, and you can see it's definitely a strong hurricane there, a major hurricane. You can see that very well-defined eye in the center of it that cleared out yesterday, and Dorian really strengthened quickly after that. So here's a news track from the National Hurricane Center. Right now looking at a Category 4. This is with max winds at 150 miles per hour. So definitely a destructive hurricane. This is going to be moving towards the Bahamas tomorrow. So those folks in the northwest Bahamas, they are under hurricane warning. They're going to be seeing those major hurricane impacts. But look how far off the coast this track for Dorian is now. And a lot of models don't even have it making landfall. A lot of them have it just kind of riding up the coast. Very similar to what Matthew did in 2016. If you recall, that one kind of rode right up the coast, and it ended up making landfall as a Cat 1 in North Carolina, but it was a Cat 4 just offshore of Florida. Will it affect Tallahassee? I'm going to get to that, Jonathan, but the good news really, it doesn't look like it much anymore. Again, as this cone shifts east, that puts us out of the impacts, and you can see Tallahassee and most of the Big Bend, we're not even in the cone anymore. So that's ideal. What's it looking like for South Carolina? South Carolina is probably going to be seeing some heavy rainfall, inland flooding, but again, the further east Dorian trends, that means the lower the impact for inland areas. Again, especially if it doesn't even make a landfall, because we were talking about seeing a major hurricane make landfall somewhere on the east coast of Florida with pretty high confidence, but these models really starting to show that upper level ridge in the western Atlantic breaking down by next week, and that will give Dorian that escape route to kind of work up north like you see right here. So this is expected to kind of ride up the east coast of Florida by Labor Day on Tuesday. And again, this is a good look for us here for the entire state of Florida, but it could change too, right? Yeah, it could, Holly. Again, it's going to change in the next couple of days, but the changes for the past few days have been favorable, locally speaking, for us here in North Florida. We're going to show you a graphic up here in a second. Again, those max winds are at 150 miles per hour. This is a high-end Cat 4. The National Hurricane Center is keeping the intensity in Cat 4 for the next couple of days, not upgrading. Regardless, even if it does upgrade, that's not anything that we have to worry about. It's something that those folks down in the Bahamas, who are going to be affected by this tomorrow, would be seeing that impact from. So we have a couple different products out from the National Hurricane Center. Hurricane warnings in effect for the northern part of the Bahamas. You see those shaded in red there. You got a hurricane watch, but it does look like Dorian will be making that turn, so those conditions are possible there. And tropical storm watch is starting to get put off down on the Treasure Coast up toward the Space Coast on Florida. So we've been showing this graphic all week. This is for our coverage area. If you live somewhere else, this doesn't pertain to you. But if you live in North Florida, South Georgia, this was the worst case scenario if it went in the Gulf. You saw the latest cone. Dorian is shifting, so we can kind of take that one off the table. Looks like Dorian is not going to make it in the Gulf. That's great news. Doesn't give it that chance to redevelop. We still have these two potential scenarios on the table. Again, this is locally speaking for North Florida. The latest track really kind of rides it up, kind of close to this green one, a low impact scenario. We might see a little bit of moisture come through, but that's minimal, again, compared to a worst case scenario if it did go into the Gulf and then re-intensify there. Medium impact still on the table. That's if Dorian kind of trends back west, those tracks that we were looking at more like yesterday. And if it does do that and ride up the state, we would get a weakening tropical system make it up here, maybe a depression, maybe a tropical storm. But it's not the worst case. Again, you could get hit with a hurricane from the Gulf. I don't think that's going to happen anymore as models really trending further east. Low impact again, though. That's what it's looking like right now with the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. If we see a little bit of rain, not too bad. So basically nothing. If it took that track now, basically nothing for us here in North Florida, which is great news. Folks along the East Coast, again, pretty much the entire I-95 corridor would still likely see some coastal storm surge, some rainfall and heavy rainfall and gusty winds, but the further offshore, the better. Again, the latest track is great news for the state of Florida. It does start to get a little hairy once you get up towards the Carolinas and put them at a higher threat with a higher chance of being impacted. So it'd be ideal if it stayed offshore the whole time, but for our coverage area, we are looking at one of the better cases that we could have come out with. So here's a look at some of these factors. Again, models are showing this upper level ridge of high pressure in the western Atlantic being a bit weaker, maybe retrograding east a little sooner, and that's going to give Dorian that escape route, which could make it not make landfall in Florida. That's what a lot of these models are talking about. So if it works east, out of our hair, weakens out, Dorian's going to be riding up the coast just like that track, and that is what a lot of models are liking. If this upper level high strengthens, if it doesn't budge, then you're looking at a better chance for that steering flow to be a bit stronger and then push it into the state. But latest model's looking good. These tropical storm wind probabilities, we've showed this graph to you a few times this week during these Facebook Lives, they're dropping for us. Still, for the next 5 days, there's some percentage here in Tallahassee, 10, 20%. Most likely we're not going to be dealing with that. And you had spots down along the coast that were near 100%. Those are dropping again as Dorian will be just offshore. So the National Hurricane Center cone is doing a pretty good job, I think, showing the latest model trends further east. And this is, let's go back to it for you. Good news, good news, good news, good news for us here in Florida. If you time it out, it is still going to slow down, which is kind of an issue. We are going to be looking at some heavy rainfall if it did make it onshore. By Monday afternoon, this is Labor Day, you got it right off the coast of South Florida. So it's still not a good idea if you got these Labor Day weekends planned down on the beach in central South Florida. Not going to be the best weather for that, not the best cruising weather, but we're hoping that Dorian's not making landfall. Tuesday afternoon right up the Space Coast, and then Wednesday and Thursday we're going to see it right up to the Carolinas. So wherever Dorian is closest onshore, if it is a slow mover, we're going to be seeing some locally heavy rainfall up and down this 95 corridor. But again, Tallahassee, the Big Bend, southern Georgia, for the most part, is out of the cone of uncertainty. That could change in the coming days, but better confidence now that we're going to be seeing the lower impact scenario here, which is good news. So we're still going to continue to talk about Dorian for the next few days until it's not a problem anymore. So likely till next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We're going to be talking a lot about Dorian, especially because although it may not impact you locally, you have a lot of interest there through Central, South Florida, North Florida, up the entire East Coast. So again, we're going to keep you informed on that, but probably going to be able to scale back a lot of the local coverage, considering if we just get a little bit of rain out of Dorian, that's not going to be the end of the world for us. Not too bad, really. So, again, this was our worst case scenario. We tried to kind of break down all the possibilities for you this week. That would be Dorian going into the Gulf. Doesn't look like that's going to happen anymore. That was in the cone the other day. Now it's not. We could still see medium impact, low impact scenarios. If it took the track the National Hurricane Center is putting out, we're looking at the low impact scenario, just some rain. So nothing to really be concerned about. It's not a bad idea to assess your hurricane readiness plan now and check that kit and make sure you have stuff. It's better to be safe than sorry. Better to have that stuff because you will probably need it in the future. It is September almost, and that is the busiest month of hurricane season. Let me show you this real quick. The National Hurricane Center They've got two more tropical waves right now they're keeping their eyes on. One is actually in the Gulf, just north of the Yucatan Peninsula there. You see this little rotation there. That's a kind of ragged looking lower level low pressure system. This has a 30% chance to develop in the next couple of days over in the western Gulf. Looks like if that were to develop and make landfall anywhere, it would be over toward the east coast of Mexico. Not something that we got to worry about. You also got this other one. This is out in the Atlantic, a tropical wave off the west coast of Africa. That's being given a 60% chance to develop in the next 5 days, but this development zone is kind of shifting north, so if this thing does gain latitude pretty quickly, it's likely not going to be an issue for many of us, especially if it does try to ride up and then maybe go affect Bermuda. I don't think that anything you need to be too stressed about is out there right now. Dorian is still a threat, certainly a threat for parts of the 95 corridor in South and Central Florida, but locally speaking, Dorian's threat is decreasing for us here in the Big Bend. So by Wednesday, that's when it'll be up on North Florida East Coast, and here we are, pretty far away. So we'll probably see some moisture move in from that. But for the most part, those impacts, that's a low impact scenario, and that's good news for us here. So if you guys do have any questions, shoot them in the comments. I think that we can probably wrap this up here soon. Again, as Dorian's threat is going down, we can, I don't want to say lay back, but we'll still pay attention to it. But it's just not as big a worry. Still not holding my breath. Yeah, like I said, we had Michael last year. We had Hermine a couple of years ago. People here are very familiar with what these hurricanes can do, locally speaking, especially Michael. And Dorian is a serious hurricane. It's Category 4, pretty close to a Category 5, but we're not looking at that same kind of storm, at least for us. And hopefully if it stays offshore, if it took this track, that would be the ideal scenario. You see, potentially making a landfall maybe in the Carolinas, but it would be noticeably weaker, not even a major hurricane. We'll be dealing with a major hurricane through at least next Monday, Tuesday. By Wednesday, Thursday, they have it weakening down to a Category 2. You have some more upper level shear, which would likely start to deteriorate what is left of Dorian. Very conducive environment now. That's why it's been able to intensify so quickly. Yesterday, that went up to a Cat 4 pretty quick there in the afternoon. So Dorian's latest track, good news for not only us here in the Big Bend, but the entire state of Florida. Not looking at this landfall anymore, but it's still possible. Things will change with the track and the forecast intensity over the next few days. That's just how these tropical systems are. There's too much uncertainty to really just predict these things this far in advance. So we'll see this track change. The next update actually comes out at 8 p.m., 2 hours from now. So we'll post all that stuff on social for you. We'll push it out to your phone. Make sure you download our Storm Shield app. Always a good idea to have. I have it on my phone. You can check the radar, forecast, all the stuff like that. So I appreciate y'all watching. Hope y'all have a great Saturday. I'll try to scroll through those comments, see if I did miss anything while doing this. Again, there's no 6:30 show today. That's going to be on at 11 o'clock after the Auburn-Oregon game. We'll have our late night news if you want to check out that. Probably don't want to watch those highlights from the FSU game earlier, but we'll be talking about Dorian. We'll be talking about the weather for you. I do hope that you guys have a great Saturday afternoon. We'll be here with you. See you later.